In this video, we're going to start working on the plan detail here in the lower right-hand corner. We'll add some of the components similar to the way that we did with the wall section. So I'm going to go to, let's see, Masonry call out number 2. And this is where I'm going to start bringing in some components and adding more detail. First thing I'm going to do is go to Load Autodesk Family, and I'm going to type in here concrete masonry unit. And I'm going to select this one that's called CMU two cores and top view, and load that in here. Okay, then I'm going to go to annotate and components, and I need to find the right size. The one I'm going to use is an 8 by 8 by 16. Right, and I will bring that in here. Okay, and I guess I can go ahead and add a few more while I'm at it. Let's see here. I want them to be, well, I think I'm going to copy them. Copy 16 inches or 1 foot, 1'4". Copy, I'll just keep copying them. Oops, I think I made it 16 feet. Copy. Okay, and some of it's going to get cropped off there, and then I'm gonna make one more copy way over here, and I'm going to rotate it so it is oriented vertically in plan, and then I will move it over. Make a copy, one more copy. 16 inches. Okay. And now, as you can see, and looking at this three-dimensional representation, these blocks are similar to what we just brought in. But you'll notice that the corner has a slightly different detail, right? It doesn't have that little void space at the end. So we're going to have to modify the block component that we brought in by drawing over it by hand. I'm sure that if you looked around, you could probably find some Revit components out there that you could bring into the file. But since we're only doing one of these, I think it would be just as easy to make some editing, some annotations on top of it graphically. So what we need to do is use some regions to mask and then to generate the new shapes here. So I'm going to first do the mask part, the masking region, and I'm going to turn this so that there's no, see, invisible lines. And what I'll do is make a rectangle to basically cover these lines that we don't want to appear. Okay, and then hit the check mark. All right, so there's the masking portion. So the next thing that I'm going to do is create the core that's bigger than what we see here. So I'll go to region, solid white. I want to turn the radius on. I want a rectangle. After I pick rectangle, then I click on the box for the radius. Thin line should be my line style. And let's go ahead and make a rectangle here and check. Okay, I'm going to click on it. You know, the line weight is a little bit different, but I don't think that's going to be a problem when we get to the level of the detail that we're doing. Okay, now I need to see if we can bring this back just a little bit. No, I think I'll make some new lines on top of it. Okay, the detail lines. I'm going to click on detail line, thin lines, and just come back over the top of that one. Maybe it won't make any difference. And then I will also begin to draw in what's missing from these diagonal lines, and I'll bring it back a little bit there. So I just want to kind of complete the form. Now, if we were going to do this more than once, I would suggest that you make a component out of it, but this is going to be the only one that appears in the drawing in the project. So come to these, can we roughly here, and then trim them back by stretching them. Okay. Right, so now we have something that approximates the look of the corner units, and we can proceed with the other details that we need to add. Next, I'm going to add the waterproof membrane. That's the air and moisture barrier. So I'll go to detail lines, and this time I'm going to pick the hidden 1/16-3. And I'll bring this up, and then I'll try to select it, tab, move it over, see if it lets me do this, 0.25 inches. Yeah, okay, and then I'll add another line along this edge here. Select it, tab. Okay, and same thing, 0.25, just to give it a little bit of space graphically, right? All right, we'll need to bring in some bricks also. So I'm going to go search for bricks in the Autodesk family, the Load Autodesk family tool here, bricks top. I think we should be able to use this one right here. I'm going to load that in. And I'll go back to annotate components and begin adding them, starting with the corner here. Right, and those are going to be 8 inches, as that's the standard size. So I'll just make a bunch of copies till I fill them the space, and then I'll make one copy and rotate it for the ones oriented in the vertical direction and plan. Okay, I've filled in all of those bricks on the horizontal side here and the vertical side. And we're ready to move on to the next part of this. The next thing that we'll be drawing in this plan detail is the ladder ties, and this one that I have here on the screen has this adjustable component to it. Basically what happens is this portion of it gets laid into the CMU, and then you can basically build the CMU wall first with these ladder ties in there, and then you can build the brick wall, and these are then somewhat adjustable. They kind of sit in these little eyes. So our detail is this corner condition. So we are going to generate something that looks roughly like what you see here, using detail lines. So you can see when you select these products, you can sort of specify how big the block are. and, you know, things having to do with the size of the wire and what those wires are made out of and that sort of thing. So you'll notice here that this manufacturer recommends stainless steel for maximum protection against corrosion. So it also comes in a hot dip galvanized, and these are different types of alloys as well. So I'm going to go to the annotate tab, detail line, and I'm going to begin drawing a medium line weight line. I'll start just like right on top of the edge. And see if we could get a measurement here. 1 1/4. So if I was to take that line, and let's see if I can grab it, it's going to be a little tricky to do that. And then I'll move it down 0.625 inches. So it sits on the middle there. And I'll move it over the same dimension. Did not let me do that. Let me get the other line in first, and then we'll see if we can trim it. Detail line, I'll do this other one here in that corner, bring that up. Tab till I can select it, and then move over 0.625 inches. All right, now let's see, can we bring this back to here? Now we can, yeah, there we go. For the lower side here, bring that over. And select it and move it 0.625 inches up. And I just have one more to do. I'll get those lines to go to modify and basically do a fillet. And we'll get one more in. Annotate, detail line. Move this up. Tab. Move that over, same dimension, 0.625 inches. And see if I can stretch this down. Yes. Okay, so we have the ladder tie portion, at least the ones that run lengthwise. And we'll go ahead and add a few more lines before we, let's go to the detail. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so we have another line that needs to be drawn at the middle of the CMU. How do they do them over here? Yeah, so at the middle of the CMU, there will be another line that needs to be added. Go back to Revit. Detail line. And all right, what's going on here? Medium line, and let's see, will it let me place it where I want to? Maybe not. Let's measure across here so we can figure out where to center it. That's 1 inch, so I'm going to move this over 1/2 inch. And see if we can bring that there. There we go. All right, so I'm going to have more of those. This one here needs to cross to the other side. And then we will begin to make copies of this one. Copy 16 inches. And the other one will fall off that side. So I'll do another detail line here. and then here. So, okay, now the next thing that needs to be added is the component that extends out to the brick. So what we'll draw for this is basically just a rectangle that kind of overlaps the portion that's sitting on the CMU and that sits, inside the brick. Okay, so, I have these lines drawn sitting at the midpoint of the block, and now I'm going to draw the lines that represent the parts that attach to the brick wide. What I will do is go to annotate detail line and construct a rectangle. I'm going to roughly place it here and then up here. Let's repeat that. Some of these windows out of the way. Okay. I'd say about 2 inches by 7 3/4 is fine. So I'm going to click on Control and select all 4 of those sides, and under Annotate, I'm going to make a detail group, create a group, and we'll just call this Masonry tie. And say OK. Right. Now I should be able to click on it, and first of all, I'm going to move it over 1 inch, and I'm going to move it back 1 inch. Basically, I just want to get a little bit of an overlap condition so it's graphically clear what's happening. Copy, and let's bring this over 16 inches, and that one's going to fall off. This one, I'll come over 32 inches. And then I'll repeat the same thing. I'll make a copy of this one. And I'll rotate it. And move it maybe from midpoint to here. Move that in. Okay, so now we have some kind of representation that's describing how those two wives of masonry are attached. Just notice that somehow this had come to the front, and I'm going to send that to the back so that this sits in front. All right, the next thing that we will work on is grouting some of the cores of the masonry. So I will show you a detail of what that might look like. In your textbook, this is a different type of tie here, and our spacing is going to be closer. We'll put one every 16 inches, but there's reinforcing here, and then there's grout that fills in around it. So we'll be adding that to our detail. So this corner one that I had made solid, we can actually click on that and change it to one that's filled with grout. Okay. And we'll basically take every, like one of these every 16 inches. So I'm going to go to the region tool, and this time I'll choose the grout. Got thin lines. I want to make sure I'm using the rectangle tool for this, and I want to set a radius to 3/8 of an inch. So now what I'll do is create a rectangle. Click on the check mark, and then I'll just drag it a little bit further over. And, while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and add some rebar for those vertical for the vertical cores. Now, if you go to the wall section, the note that we added is the number 6 rebar at 24 inches on center. we're going to change that to 16 inches on center. Okay, so I will go back to the detail, the plan detail. Because if you'll notice, these cores wouldn't really permit you to do that. We would need to use a different configuration for our concrete blocks to make that work. But I am going to use a number 6 rebar. So I'm going to go to component and I'm going to look for the rebar in here. Be alphabetical, so it would be towards the bottom. There's number reinforcing bar sections. I'll do the number 6. And my goal is to get it roughly centered in those cores. Right, and I will, oops, I'll add another one here, component number 6. Okay, and then I will select both the, it's not going to let me do that. Let's try to pick the other one first. Tab, and then control and select that rebar and make a copy 16 inches. Okay, and I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to add it to that one right there. Tab, tab, tab. Control, copy, and this one may be a little trickier to get into place. That looks pretty good. It needs to be shifted a little bit. Okay. Right, so those are the grouted cores. The last thing that we would add in terms of details before we add some notes is the metal studs that will be used for furring out this wall. So again, I will go to insert, load Autodesk family, and type in metal stud. And I'm looking for, these are the runners. This one right here, interior metal stud section. Go back to annotate component. And there we go. So I will place one right here. And typically these are spaced at 16 inches on center. So I'm going to go 16 inches. And there's another one right there. All right, we'll make a copy and we'll take this one and rotate it. And move that one into the corner here. Move it down a bit. And we'll need an extra one, maybe sometimes they double them up, but I will just go ahead and draw 16 inches. Some of the details you kind of leave to the carpenter to resolve. If it's important, you're going to like heavily dimension and notate it. All right, that should do it for the detail components of this plan detail. Now we can add some notes. So I'm going back to the wall section because we're going to be taking basically a bunch of these same notes and bringing them. So the brick, the ladder ties, the cavity, the rigid insulation, the fluid applied waterproof membrane, the 8-inch CMU, and the 6-inch rebar. And the last thing to add would be this. So basically everything that describes the wall assembly is what we would want to bring into that file or into that detail. So I'm in the detail and I am going to create just a temporary reference line. I'm going to place it perhaps about right here. One thing you'll notice is that this is part of the foundation here, footing, I believe. If you go to manage and you click on object styles, one thing that's by default turned off in views is the topography. So we want to turn that on. I'm going to go back to visibility graphics, actually, is where I want to change that setting. Topography, turn that on, apply, okay. And you should see that the foundation is no longer appearing because it's below the top of the ground. Okay, so I will proceed with adding the notes and the leaders associated with them. All right, so under annotate, you're going to go to text, and the same concept you would use when detailing a wall assembly. You can start with the outer material and begin to work your way inward. So I'll go ahead and begin with the 4-inch face brick. And I'm using the 3/32 inch size for the text. Okay, and you can add a leader and then begin to kind of make all those adjustments. But basically you'll be bringing in all of those notes or copying those notes here. So I'll make a bunch of copies here, and then I'll just begin to edit them. Actually, I was able to copy that text in, and I'll just show you how it wasn't using the copy that I already had there, but I copied and pasted that in there, and then I'm returning here. Okay, so you may figure out a faster way of doing some of these steps through some of the copy features. Okay, so now I've got those notes in here, and I can start getting the leaders set up. Back here, face brick, horizontal ladder ties. Maybe I'll move this one up. Now move it down so it's directly at one of them. They're coming a little closer to get it. And always, again, make that horizontal line before you break into a diagonal. This one needs a leader, fluid applied waterproofing membrane. That's here. We have an extra, this one should be 8 inches of 8-inch CMU. Good. Okay, so that is all that is needed for that detail. I'm going to erase that guideline.